On the behalf of Amity Institute of Education, Amity University, Uttar Pradesh, I would like to welcome you all in today's event on World Mental Health Day, which is being observed every year on 10th October to create awareness and to promote efforts to mobilize the support for mental health. But as you know, we all know that this year it has come at a time where we all are grappling with some issues related to mental health. That's why this year, the World Federation for Mental Health has decided the theme Mental Health for All, Greater Investment, Greater Access. So Amity Institute of Education is also taking a small step in this mission by organizing this webinar on teacher and taught in context to mental health. Without taking much time, I would like to invite our energetic head of the Institute, Professor Alka Mudgal, to welcome our guest, Professor Braj Bhushan ji. Over to you, Alka ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Ritika. Thank you so much. And students, as already Ritika ma'am has talked about the importance of mental health. We all know the importance of mental health. It's very, very important. And nowadays, when we are in a situation which is very challenging for all of us, it has become more important. You know, how do we deal with our, with the challenges before us, how strong we are mentally to actually, face these challenges, and how we are handling all them. And, the impact of our thoughts, our behavior, our emotions, it's a very, very important part of our life. Being healthy emotionally can promote productivity. We can be very, very productive. We can be very energetic, and we can be very effective in all our activities, whether we are at work, we are in school, or whether we are working for our own selves, that is in our personal lives also. So it plays a very important role in our, maintaining our relationships also. And it also allows us to adapt to changes in our life and to cope up with all kind of adversities. So I think, all of you understand it, all of you know about it, and being, the pre-service teacher, you know the importance of this in your life. Because for teachers, it's more important than anybody else on this earth. So today, I am really delighted and very pleased to welcome Professor Braj Bhushan, sir, to our on a very special day on the World Mental Health Day. Professor Bhushan is the head of Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Kanpur, and he is one of the best speakers in the country. We have been referring to his videos for our lectures also. You all must have seen that. And he has been invited by several prestigious universities and higher education institutions to share his ideas and experiences with the students and the faculty members. He has expertise in the field of cognitive neuropsychology, cognitive hypnometrics, and trauma psychology and specific learning disorder. For his outstanding contribution to research work, he was awarded Man of the Year Award 2005 by American Biographical Institute, North Carolina, and currently he also is occupant of Sri Deva Raj Chair. So he is a big name if we talk about him. And we are really delighted to have Professor Bhushan with us today, and I would like to invite him to share his ideas, his work on teacher and taught in context of mental health. And I believe that all of us, the teachers and the students, we all are going to benefit in a big way by his sharing of experiences and his work with us. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us here. I know you are going very, very busy with all the webinars, delivering lectures, and in being in conferences. But today you have taken out time to address the pre-service teachers who are actually going to, handle small kids in the schools. So it's going to be very important session for all of them. Over to you, sir, and a very warm welcome on behalf of Amity University, Uttar Pradesh. And we are really happy that you are here with us. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, ma'am. My sincere words of appreciation for appreciating me. Professor Mudgal, Dr. Ritika Sharma, who was instrumental getting me here, and all the faculty members of MIT, the education department, and I don't know if there are members from the other institutions as well of MIT.
Yes, sir.
So I'm thankful to all of you to for giving me this opportunity to get in touch with the students and my colleagues at MIT. I'll share my screen now. Do let me know if it's visible so that I can continue. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically what I intend to talk about today is about the mental health issues that are concerned with the teachers, with the students, and how as teachers we can play an important role when we are supposed to take care of the mental health needs of the students. To begin with, I'm just giving you the definition of mental health given by WHO. All of you are familiar with this. The reason I thought of starting from this was the fact that there are a couple of words that are highlighted red, which basically shows what are the things that WHO stresses upon. And hereafter, I will go to the previous two definitions, little older definitions. And one, of course, is a little newer compared to this one, 2005 definition. To give you a feel at how things have evolved in terms of our definition of mental health. So the current definition, of course, is a very, very positivist kind of a definition, which emphasizes on the realization of the potential by an individual concerned, the ability of the individual to cope with the stress that he or she is experiencing, and as well as trying to work productively and fruitfully. But the last part of it is very interesting, where it says that you have to significantly contribute to the community. So it's not that you are able to realize your potential, you are able to achieve things according to your abilities, you are able to cope with the stresses of your life. All these things are confined to you and your. But then at the end, you should be able to work so fruitfully and productively so that you don't only contribute to your own life, but you also contribute to the life of others and the community as a whole. Just a year before, there was a definition of mental health which talked about performance based on the mental functions and the productive activities of the individual, which would help the individual fulfill the relationships, the ability to cope once again. So you realize that coping has been emphasized, but then besides this, we also have the preference of the individual. Okay. Preference in terms of performing to the optimum level of one's mental function. And a definition which was given after the WHO's definition, which basically says that, okay, you have to be free from psychopathology, you have to be very emotional, psychological, and socially in a very good state. So if you put all of them together, what do we find? We find that yes, we have evolved from psychopathology to contribution to the community. We have evolved from emotional, psychological, and social well-being to realization of potential and to productively engage, fruitfully engage in our daily life. So right from pure disease-based, the what you call as the pathological model or bio psychosocial model of mental health, from there we have come to a very, very positivistically oriented kind of a definition of mental health. So my idea was not to go into the definition of mental health, but I just thought that, okay, we'll see that in the last 5-7 years also how we have moved from emphasizing on psychopathology to psychological, emotional, and social being, from there to significantly and productively contributing not only to the self, but also to the community at large. What is also important is the fact is that how in the entire process does the mental health of the teachers suffer? And this is extremely interesting from two perspectives. We will try to understand how the mental health of teachers gets affected and what kind of issues they suffer from. Two kind of studies I'll quote. One is a study from UK. It's a very recent study, 2020 study, and the other is a US study. So these are the two studies that I'll talk about. Now, mental health and well-being of teachers. This was studied in England, and what was very surprising to find was that 1 in 20 teachers in UK, they suffer from mental health problems. And these are the problems which last for more than 1 year. So that's really, really challenging a task for policymakers and also for those who are into administration, education administration. Second interesting thing that you find in that study is that if you look at the long-lasting mental health problems, in psychology, we use a word called lifetime prevalence. So lifetime prevalence basically means that for entire life, if you have a given problem, then that represents lifetime prevalence. But we are not talking of lifetime prevalence here. This is basically long-lasting. That means it can last for any time beyond 5 to 7 years time frame. In the 1990s, 1% of the teachers in UK, they were found to be the victims of mental health issues. In 2020 now, 5% of the teachers have suffered from mental health issues. So there is a rise of 4%, and that's something extremely worrisome. We don't have any data for India, but definitely it shows what's happening to the teaching community at large. If you try to match it with the trend in the prescription and sale of antidepressant drugs in the UK, it matches, because the antidepressant medication, the sale has gone exponentially high. Okay, and what has been realized is that 1/3 of the newly recruited teachers in 2020, it has been realized that those who were recruited just after 5 years of their career, at some point in time, they think of quitting the job. So that is something which is extremely challenging. Now comes the need to monitor the teacher's well-being. So what this study, the reason I was sharing this with you, that although this is not an Indian data, but it does show that there is a need to monitor the well-being of the teachers as well. Little later, I'll try to connect it to the Indian scenario, although it's without data. Secondly, the recruitment and the retention policy, the UK government is now contemplating that they should really look into that. And the major issues that was identified in 2020 survey in UK, the issues that the teachers suffer, it includes sleeping disorders. That could mean that you have wakeful kind of a sleep, you have several kind of sleep disturbances. Panic attacks. This was something that usually teachers mostly would not have. And then the anxiety issues. Okay, and these were considered as the 3 prominent indicators which contributed to the decision of a teacher to quit the profession. So that is something that I wanted to highlight. Let's move to US now. In US, 75% of the teachers, they were found to have work-related physical or mental health issues. 19% of them, that is 1 out of 5 teachers, they reported panic attacks. Now, the UK study also, we found, panic attack was an important factor there. In the US also, we find that 19% of the teachers report panic attacks. 56% of them, they reported insomnia or difficulty in sleeping. Now, difficulty in sleeping was reported in the UK study as well. In the US study, they found 2 more things. 41% of the teachers reporting difficulty in concentrating on whatever task they are performing. And 47% of them, they reported problem in personal relationships. So somehow they had terrible problem. No? 47 would mean that half the teaching community would report the problem. What was the consequence of these mental health issues? 53% of the teachers, they considered, not that all of them left, but 53% of the teachers, they considered that they should drop the profession. 28% of them, they were forced to take time off from their regular teaching assignment. And 52% of them, they were off for either a month or so during the academic year. Now, these are the what you call privileges that teachers in India don't have. If you want to consider leaving this job to take up another job, finding a job in India is not that easy, even for teachers. If you want to take time off, it's extremely difficult, neither for teachers nor for education administrator. It's just not possible. And if you want to plan an off because of stress or any mental health issue, that's again something close to impossible. The only thing the teachers can avail, the female teachers that too, is the maternity leave and the child care leave. Child care leave also came only few years back. Earlier we had only maternity leave. But then some good institutions, they also, at least in higher education, they provide you study leave, no? Which is for 2 years in the government institutions. So for 2 years, they will pay you the salary in some institutions and give you leave so that you go for acquiring a higher degree. The idea is that you will go and refresh, you will regain a fresh set of knowledge, and then you will revert back to the institute, which will again give them a far more refined and fine-tuned teacher. So that's the primary objective. Private sector schools, institutions, I doubt how many of them they give you sabbatical or they give you study leave. These two other leaves, no, the maternity leave and the child care leave, of course, these are mandatory. So law allows you to take this leave. What was also very interesting to find in both these studies, the UK and the US study that we discussed right now, that the symptoms and the issues, they were similar across seniority level. So whether you are a new entrant, whether you have spent a few years in the profession, whether you are at a very senior level, you are head, you are dean, you are director, that doesn't make a change. Okay. The seriousness of the issue, the kind of the issue, and the symptoms experienced therefore remains by and large similar in nature. One more thing that you find excessively being studied in psychology at least is the work-family life balance. Now, work-family life balance till now, before this online classes began in India, we only knew that fine, there is a place called office and there is a place called home, and a person is supposed to strike a balance between the requirement or the challenges posed at the work front and the domestic front. Now suddenly we realize that the office has shifted to home. So now we have work from home. So you have your office coming virtually to your house. You have your laptop, you have your other electronic devices, you have your network connectivity. You have a whole lot of things where, although you are physically located at your home front, you are along with your family members. Those challenges, those needs remain same, but then suddenly you have to behave differently because you are engaged in a online mode. So right from classes to presentations to assignments, exams, to this newly evolved culture of webinars. No? Since I guess April onwards, webinars have started taking off. And now I think every day you have hundreds of webinars taking place in this large country of 138 crore people. Just to look at the teachers in India, there are a couple of studies, but I did not find the study as systematically performed as the UK and the US study. Therefore, I am not quoting the percentages here. You realize that many of you who would become the school teachers in the coming years, We already have somewhere around 60 lakhs of elementary school teachers and around 21 lakhs of secondary school teachers. But we realize that what the government wants, at least in the government sector, what the teachers are supposed to perform are activities which go beyond teaching, far beyond teaching. For instance, managing midday meal scheme, updating the voter list for government school teachers, door-to-door immunization program. Teachers have been heavily involved into this. Our teachers also are involved into election duties. Okay. Now, these are things which, when you opted for the profession, you did not know that you will be basically subservient to so many other organizations within the federal structure, where you would be contributing to these things, which would take much of your time, and you will get very little time to prepare either for your teaching module, or for the assignment, or for the interaction, or for correction, and other kinds of activities. Now look at what kind of disproportionate demands what I can envisage the teachers in India are experiencing. Right now I'm focusing more on teachers in the school system, primary, secondary, senior secondary level. Approximate contact hour is 6 hours in the usual days. Nowadays in online, I guess the government regulation says that it can't go beyond 4.5 hours of interaction. Now, what are the expectations? We means as a non-teacher, we expect the teachers to act as parents. If needed, they are supposed to act as counselors. Many school administrators also want them to act as counselors. They are definitely supposed to act as a disciplinarian. They are supposed to be tutors, coaches. You have to communicate with the parents. You have to plan your lessons. This is on your teaching front. Teaching duties, coaching duties, grading, administrative duties that the school assigns you. Besides that, there are some kind of activities which are also expected from you, but these are basically associated with sharing the outcome of the students. Like when you participate in the parent teachers meeting and you have to tell about the academic report of the child. Most of the good schools nowadays also have the health report. So they call a couple of doctors, they will have the health checklist, and they present a brief summary, 2-page, 3-page report. But then nowhere I have seen in the health report any mention of mental health issues or behavioral science. Mental health issues, of course, I understand that you need a trained personnel. I saw either a school counselor or a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist who would be doing this. But then there are a whole lot of behavioral science. Behavioral science where you just need a teacher who can tell you that, okay, I see these behavioral changes is in your child, and I guess that these changes are indicative of some kind of concerns that the parent should focus on. And with all of this, suddenly we have the new burden of online teaching. Okay. So the burden of online teaching, I'll come a little later to it. Or let me focus it right now. Considering the UK and the US study of the teachers and the kind of statistics that we draw from there, the fact that large number of teachers have issues with sleep pattern, large number of teachers have panic attacks. Okay, we don't have such data, how many teachers in India have reported such kind of a problem, but we can visualize it. And the visualization largely comes from the fact that teachers are supposed to quickly adapt to the kind of new scenario that has evolved. So March was the time, March end, when the lockdown was imposed in the country. Strict guidelines were positioned by the government, and it was enforced by the district administration, especially by the police forces. And by the time April was coming to an end, the schools came forward with their plan for online teaching. Now imagine a teacher who is somewhere in the age range of 45 plus, who has with great difficulty learned how to use smartphones, and is still struggling with WhatsApp features and Facebook features, and tutor features, suddenly is supposed to record the lecture, to interact with students online, to engage in proctored exams, in grading, all kinds of responsibilities. And without realizing how the Indian families actually work. Indian families are largely dependent on their adult female members. Okay, so right from cleaning of houses to providing meals to all kinds of care, concern, uh, love, whatever largely you find in the Indian families, a greater amount of credit goes to the women who manage all this in the house. Now, those women suddenly are also asked that fine, besides providing all this, you cannot compromise with your household responsibilities. But besides handling all this, now you have to plan your lessons, you have to record your lectures, or you have to deliver it online. And when you do all of this, you also realize that now you are vulnerable to assessment. The kind of assessments, I am sure you must have gone through several of those social media posts where they will have derogatory remarks for those who are involved in online teaching. And the derogatory remark comes not because of your lack of ability or because of your lack of knowledge in the domain. Rather, it comes for some kind of things which need not be even considered so seriously. Like if I pass an adverse remark talking about your accent, okay, the kind of words you choose, your pronunciation, okay, the fact that you repeat the same thing 2 or 3 times, okay, maybe on your dressing sense, maybe the way you are interacting or something that suddenly has fueled you and you have started scolding a student. Whole lot of these things come into place and you realize that suddenly you have become extremely vulnerable. Okay, you are vulnerable. Now you are being assessed. And be sure, when teachers worldwide are already reporting issues like panic attacks, these things itself are extremely demanding. We don't have data to substantiate how many teachers in India have reported such kind of attacks or insomnia or compromise. But this is, of course, a very threatening kind of a situation. And all of this definitely, hampers our mental health. But given these facts that there are issues which would adversely affect our mental health, when we take up a job as a teacher, there are certain responsibilities that we have to perform. So let's come to the common mental health problems of students in India. Okay, and here I am not taking data from anywhere else, but I have some data primarily from the Indian subcontinent. 1 in 5 students in India, they are supposed to experience mental health related problem. And because 1 in 5 would mean few crore kids in India in the school system have mental health related problems. And therefore, it is extremely crucial that there should be a process, there should be a mechanism put at place where we go for early detection and proper diagnosis. Now, proper diagnosis is something that only clinicians can do. In India, unfortunately, we are around 28 crore Indians, children and adults put together. 20 crores Indians, they are expected to be suffering from mental health related issues in 2020. And to take care of them, we have approximately only 4,000 trained mental health professionals. So this distribution is extremely skewed. And with this skewed distribution, we now extract a slice where we are saying that 1 in every 5 child is likely to experience mental health related problem. And if that is the case, then of course proper diagnosis is extremely problematic, because in rural area we don't have people, in the urban area also we have skewed distribution, and the supply demand ratio is extremely skewed in nature. So there are certain things, I think, which the teachers can take up. Okay, and I'm sure you might disagree to what I am saying right now. But I still think that these are things, these are challenges that teachers should take up. These are on the screen. You have the common mental health problems which are reported in students: depression, ADHD, anxiety, autism spectrum, obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, the Tourette syndrome. But these things I don't want to talk about. I don't want to make it extremely clinical in nature, and that too I have a limited time frame given to me. So I'll just focus on four kind of disorders. Oppositional defiant disorder. Oppositional defiant disorder is when the child shows a tendency to defy you and to act opposite to what the instruction is. And these are the kids. If you tell them that, okay, you did not bring crackers before Diwali in the school, you will definitely find, especially in class 8, 9, 10th, 11th, students who would ensure that at least they burst a cracker in the school premise. There is a tendency to defy the order. Somewhere 11.13% of Indian kids, they are supposed to be suffering from conduct disorder. Means they don't know how to behave. Okay. An alarming 18% of Indian kids, this is an older study, 2013 study, but these are children between the classes 6 and 12. They are into substance abuse. And there was a study, of course, confined only to Mysore region in 2018, where they found that between the age of 15 and 25, 26% of the kids, they suffer from eating disorder. So either they become too bulky because they overeat, or they compromise with their body weight, and of course they are deficient on nutrition because their food intake is not proper. I would now deliberately, I'm focusing on substance abuse in Indian children. On my left, you see the kind of substance which is put into use. The age of initiation is given in the center, and on the extreme right is what are the key issues. In India, it has been found that around 12 years of age, the children, many of them, those who use tobacco, they started somewhere around the age of 12. Alcohol, they start using somewhere around 13 and a half years of age. Cannabis, somewhere again around 13 and a half. Some kind of inhalants, drugs, okay, 12.4 years. Opioids, 14 to 15 years. And even at the age of 15 years, many of them, especially in certain specific geographical region in India, they go for injectable drugs. But what are very, very alarming in this is that this substance abuse is not restricted only to boys. Even girls are involved into it. And second and most alarming thing, that as an exchange, if you cannot offer price for the money for getting these products, even sex is used as an exchange. And this makes you vulnerable to all kinds of infections and sexually transmitted diseases. So matter doesn't stop only at the abuse of a drug or adversely affecting the mental health. Rather, it also goes into the realm of physical health and well-being of the students. And then if you look at the risk factors, what are the familial risk factors? Now, the data shows that 57% of the children who are into the abuse of substances, they have a history of abuse in the family itself. So some adult members in the family must be using tobacco or alcohol or other kind of products. 47% of them, they experience conflict in their houses. Mother and father not maintaining a cordial relationship. And 46% of them have experienced physical abuse, beating by parents and other kinds of abuses. So that means that what kind of environment the child is coming from, you do not have a control over it. But when you interact with such kids who have some kind of family history of drug abuse or substance abuse, conflict in the houses, or physical abuse within the periphery of their houses, even they might bring forth certain kind of reasons. And the origin is beyond your control, but then as a teacher, you have to handle them. Now, towards the end, I'll just like to talk about a certain kind of uh, risks that teachers can take care of, and I am of the view that they should definitely take care of, irrespective of the fact that they themselves are vulnerable to mental health issues. First, go for an early detection in the child. Have school-based counseling. Most of the school nowadays have it, but unfortunately, schools have also involved their counselors into teaching. So if you do that, then you are making your counselor vulnerable, because counselor is somebody who has to play a much more different role compared to what the usual teachers, the routine teachers, are supposed to perform in the school setup. Then teachers, as a teacher, you also have to teach the social and emotional skills besides teaching the content that you are supposed to, with an emphasis on how to manage your emotion. Especially for adolescents, it's extremely important that they learn how to manage their emotion, mitigating or managing their conflicts, how to solve problems if you have one in your life. And all of this will increase their faith in themselves, and they will become resilient in their nature. Somewhere when we were talking about the needs, one in every 5 child in India suffering from mental health issues, I did mention no, that there are certain early signs that the teacher can focus upon, and I'll just focus on some of them, and with that I'll conclude. We all of us are aware of kids who suffer from ADHD. Now, ADHD has a clinical feature. No, it's uh, there is deficit in the attention, there is hyperactivity that the child shows. But then, as a non-clinician, as a teacher, how can I judge? Now, if I find somebody who has difficulty sitting idle, okay, or sitting for a long time in the same place, in the same position, or if the child shows excessive difficulty focusing on something in the school, then you should definitely, as a teacher of any subject, just as a teacher, you need to bring this to the notice of the parents, to the school counselor, so that the child can get proper and timely care by the mental health professional. Depression and anxiety are very common. Childhood depression is very, very common worldwide, even in India also. And anxiety too is extremely common. Now, if you realize, now all of them are non-clinical signs that I'm talking about. If you realize that you find a student who almost every day you find him sleeping in one or the other class, or when you just ask the child what's what he is having with him, why is he so sleepy in the class, or if you scold him, or you just ask him anything, you realize that the child appears to be a little tearful for no obvious reason, or the child appears sad to you, or the parents tell you that my child somewhere shows tendency to skip classes so that he can relax at home, or the parent tells you that he's afraid of something in the school and therefore he prefers to remain back at home. These are some of the non-clinical signs that the child might have early onset of depression or anxiety. And if that is the case, once again, it should be brought to the notice of counselor and the clinicians. For substance abuse, of course, they will try to hide it to the maximum possible extent. But if you find that when the child speaks, you identify slurred words, or you have staggered walking in the corridor, in the class, or the child suddenly falls asleep, even snores in the class, or if there is unusual hyperactivity shown by the child, and this hyperactivity is of course not equivalent to the kind of hyperactivity that you see in your DSD kids, then this is a sign that perhaps the child has resorted to substance abuse. And if you realize, of course, I'm not talking of kids who are bulimic. Bulimia is where you gain weight, you become plump. But if you have children who are suffering from eating disorder, but still they have not shown the signs of anorexia nervosa, the kind of very, very thin, slim kind of kids. Now, those kids usually show tendencies of withdrawal. They prefer to remain isolated with spend of time. They also show loss of weight, and somehow they try to cover their weight loss. Cover means even if you don't feel that cold, instead of one, you put two sweaters or one sweater with a plum jacket. Okay, so that you anyhow you try to hide that you are extremely lean and thin. If you realize those things, they are early indicators of eating disorder. And once again it should be brought. So we have the district level school of education officers, state level education officer, national level officers. And if you get a chance to interact with those teachers who are into midday meal schemes and so forth, you can sensitize them about how mental health and the time pattern of hypermetabolism, no? Or the frequency, severity, and the time pattern of some kind of a gastrointestinal dysfunctions. Okay, and how nutritional treatments are also prescribed not only to handle the physical health but also certain kinds of mental health issues. Okay, because of time constraint, I have to end by 1:45. It's already 1:42. I will not go into the details, but you can sensitize the teachers involved into midday scheme for all of this. So we need to sensitize teachers, of course, towards the mental health issues, the basic knowledge of early signs of mental health issues. Some of them we talked about here. Encourage good health. Make mental health resources available to students. Okay, stories, cartoons, where instead of Robita talking all kinds of nonsense and Doraemon providing assistive devices. Okay, let Robita talk about the mental health issues, and uh, let Doraemon provide a resource. Okay, even those can be thought of. Ensuring participation of all is extremely important for teachers, and mental health and academic performance, when we report in the PTM or when we report to parents, I think it's good to include mental health along with the physical health of the child. And when it comes to managing classroom, considering the mental health issues, it's not only the warning signs that we talked about, or not only that you try to provide education to kids, but there can be a need for crisis counseling as well. Something terrible that has happened to the child, and you manage this crisis counseling. All the teachers also have to keep in mind, and of course the administrators have to keep in mind, that some teachers, they can be bullies, and this is something you have to always put a line for yourself, that this is my uh, line that I have drawn for myself, the Lakshman Rekha that I have drawn for myself. And if I cross it, then I am no more a teacher. Okay, I am as bad as any bully that a child will experience in the life. Mostly the senior teachers or some senior in the same class. Okay, at times even parents become bullies, no? And this is something that we have to definitely keep in mind. So I think I have covered uh, most of the things that I planned because of the time frame. So ma'am, it's exactly 1:45 and I have completed what I wanted to convey. Uh, I'm extremely thankful once again to Ritika ma'am for giving me this opportunity to share things with you all, to interact with you all. And if there are questions, I'll be more than happy to entertain them.
Thank you
Yes,
so
sir.
much, sir. It was really elaborate like discussion. I am really, wanting to ask you one question, before you, Dr. Ritika starts with the questions. Sir, lastly, like you have said that certain teachers, they bully the students. That is definitely, very, very pertinent and very common issue in the schools if we look at. And most of the time we see that this teachers, they themselves, suffer from these anxiety issues and panic attacks. And in Indian culture, we have a habit of hiding these problems. We don't come up with it. We don't go to the for consultations to the counselors or anybody. So it has become a very big issue if we talk of schools, and even in higher education also.
Mhm.
So how should we take up this problem? Because if a teacher is actually not able to handle the students properly, it's a very big challenge. It's a very big problem for the education system, on the whole. So how do we go about it at the national level? Because it's not one school or two schools or the area wise distribution. No, it's prevalent all over the country. And we are hiding these issues from everybody. So what do we do about that? Can some policy or some kind of norm which can actually help the schools and the higher education institutions?
Ma'am, it's a difficult question to answer. And of course, answering this is still is little bit simpler, but managing it on the ground is extremely difficult, very, very challenging.
Very good.
For reasons that you yourself have narrated, no, that students would be frightened to mention that a teacher is a bully.
Right.
Many adults would also consider that this is not bullying. The teacher is very strict. So the distinction between strictness and bullying is blurred. So unless we define it very clearly, and the other aspect, see, somehow I don't subscribe to the idea of putting it into a policy document. We have all nice words, put in the policy documents for
True.
any and everything.
True.
And unfortunately, India is a country like many others where we are terrible in terms of implementing those issues. So when it comes to implementation, we are terrible. When it comes to policy making, we are extremely good. All our documents are so nicely written, including the mental health bill also. I right now, I was talking at some other place, and I did mention to this that what are the things that the mental health document does not talk about. Okay, you have to table a bill in the parliament. It looks good, but then a bill tabled in the parliament and promulgated by some 200 odd members does not ensure that it will be very robustly implemented at the ground level. So I think one, that we should have a very open environment where not as a complaint but just as a feature, a characteristic of this of a teacher. Any fellow teacher, any colleague can come and tell the education administrators that yes, uh, here is a teacher who has certain issues, I guess. It's not bullying, but I think it is something close to it.
Close to it.
Okay. We do not encounter the teacher directly, know that why you have done this or why are you are into such kind of a habit. The teacher also has come with a baggage, no? The teacher also has come with his or her past experiences. And the teacher also has the present liabilities that one has to manage. So we have to acknowledge that as well. I think gradually sensitizing the teachers, making some of them as a group and organizing just 1 day, half day, 2 days session with them, very close door sessions, no? Where they can openly interact with a stranger. Because if you hold it, if somebody known holds it, then you will not prefer to open up.
Exactly.
But if a stranger comes, then there is a likelihood that you will open up. So these are things that can take place. Policy, the reason I said that I am not in favor of that, because see, even physical punishment as a policy has been stopped in this country. But in almost all schools, it happens till date.
Hmm.
Earlier, I remember a very glorified school of India having a place in the school premise. It was known as caning place.
Oh.
It was known as caning place because that had the maximum visibility in the school. So if you are brought there and caned, then from all buildings, from doors and windows, other students can see you. So it was humiliation of the highest order.
Oh.
And this was one of most decorated chain of schools in India, I'm talking about, still has such kind of slapping, caning, shouting, those kind of things, or even passing unacceptable comments about your hairstyle, about your dress, all kinds of things. But this should definitely be considered. This should be given utmost attention, at least by the administrators who are administering the education scenario.
Right, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now, Dr. Ritika, over to you. Like, there are a few questions I can see in the question answer session.
Yes, ma'am.
You please go ahead with that.
Yes, ma'am. Sir, there is one question that as you have told that ADHD as well as substance abuse both have symptoms of hyperactivity. So how to get to know that is it a problem of ADHD or substance abuse?
Okay, see, I was referring to early signs. So early signs means you don't have to make a diagnosis. Diagnosis we are not supposed to make. No, only certified clinicians, no, who have the practicing license, only they can use these words. We can only say as teachers that okay, these are early signs, and I suspect. Okay, but still I will tell you because you have asked me, so I'll tell you there would still be difference. No, slurred words and no staggered walking. Okay, so when you walk and you find that the body balance is not proper, this you will not find in ADHD. No, they will run with force. Children with substance abuse will not do that. So you will find a whole lot of distinction between them. The overlap is only that some of the substance abuse kids, when they have the spikes, okay, so the chemical spike will make them involve into hyperactivity. Only that would be the distinction. Else there is a very clear-cut demarcation line between the two.
Okay, right. Thank you, sir. Another question is, sir, how can teachers reach out to students who are experiencing mental health challenges during this remote learning? Unfortunately, school counselor may have the same issue, and students are hardly seen on screen sometimes, and we cannot force them to come on the screen. So how a teacher can identify the student that who is having some, mental issue, mental health related issue?
This is a very good question, and I must say that I'm speechless. I can't answer this question. Okay, the reason being, in the virtual mode, you have limited access to information. So I can see you, okay, and if I change my position, then only a part of me will be visible to you. You can't make out, no? Right now, for instance, what kind of trouser I am wearing, you can't make out from this virtual interaction. No, where I am sitting, you can't make out from my virtual interaction. Okay, so similarly, even if I have a slurred voice, you won't be able to make out whether it is a network issue or whether it is a slurred voice.
Yes, sir.
So virtual interaction is extremely difficult. Okay, as teachers, I don't think it's possible. And because it's not possible, I think you should not be adventurous enough to make prediction, okay, just based on your virtual interaction. Please don't do that. Okay, because it might be a false alarm. Okay, and we as teachers should definitely refrain from false alarms. But what can happen? I might be a school counselor, I might not be a counselor. I might be a teacher of history, but a particular student finds somehow a connect with me. And he or she tells me that, this is nowadays, this is what is happening to me. I'm extremely tense, I'm extremely worried, ma'am, or I'm extremely worried, sir. Okay. You as an adult, you as a teacher, you are considered to be somebody who can definitely help the child. In a teacher-taught relationship, the student always thinks that if I have come to a teacher, I'll definitely get a solution. This is right from the classroom interaction on a subject to whatever problem the child is experiencing in his or her life. So if a student comes to you, if you are aware of the early signs, you can say that, okay, I know about this much, but I am a teacher of history. I'm not aware of all this. So I think you should definitely consult a clinician on this. You should consult a certified expert on this. And I'm sure you will get a required help. But we as teachers, we should not be adventurous, at least in the online platforms, no? Because you have limited access to the information.
That's very true, sir, and very rightly said by you. And this is the vision of our founder president also, sir, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan. And that is the reason why we are having, mentor-mentee sessions with our students regularly, so that the teachers and the students, they interact. Interaction means, you're just
Yeah.
talking, you're just trying to come up with whatever you have in your mind, in your heart, so that you are able to interact with the, teachers. And, maybe you will feel a little better, when you interact with the teachers, and a little stress is, that is eased out. So we are trying from our side, but definitely, there are, there is no, something very concrete which can be done by the teacher in the remote mode. So definitely. And Ritika, I can see more questions. So quickly, please,
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
take
ma'am.
up.
So one more question I would like to take, that one of our student is asking that, as you said, that depression and anxiety are extremely common problem nowadays among students. So what more can be done, or how further can the curriculum can be revised, or what else can be included in the curriculum, so that we can deal with such issues?
Well, see, there are a lot of changes that can take place. What we have followed in India is a segregated kind of a curriculum, no? So we have a defined syllabus for social sciences, we have a defined syllabus for English, we have a defined syllabus for, say, psychology. So we have split the knowledge into subject domains, okay? And we have ensured, at least in the Indian system, the way we teach it and the way the textbooks are designed, that there is no infusion of information, of transfer of knowledge from one domain to the other. Whereas ideally knowledge is knowledge, no? It's only for convenience that we separate it into different domains. If you ask me, what are the changes? I will say that don't bring too many changes in the first go. Changes should always come gradually. So my considered opinion about change in the curriculum is that let's revise only the curriculum of the primary school, nothing else. When these primary school kids will come to the next level, then we will revise the secondary school curriculum, and then the senior secondary, and likewise. Instead of making a whole upside down change right from top to bottom, I'm not in favor of that. Because we will all start customizing ourselves according to the revised syllabus. No? UGC did it for no, the revised syllabus, and see how the universities have implemented it. Even how good universities in India have implemented it. Everything has remained the same. Okay, the nomenclatures have changed. We don't want that kind of a change. No, we want a quality change. So what comes to my mind immediately is the fact that the stories that we have in class 1 and 2 should definitely change. The stories in English and Hindi textbooks. We have no stories, no fancy stories. एक कौवा प्यासा था घड़े में थोड़ा पानी था. It's a good no, poetic expression. But then why can't we have some other kind of poems and stories there? No, we have class 3 or class 4 textbook has the story of Cinderella. Okay, Cinderella, no, where a fairy comes, converts her into a fairy, goes to a party thrown by the uh, king, and then the prince comes chasing Cinderella back home with a sandal. These are unrealistic stories. Why are we teaching this to our kids? I have never found a girl called Cinderella in my life till now. Okay, right from childhood days till now, I haven't found any girl called Cinderella in India. Then why do we have a character called Cinderella in the textbook? We know that pumpkins can't convert into chariots. Why do we have this kind of stories? Okay. From the recent news items that you hear, the Hathras episode, the Aligarh episode, it's the rapists, it's the bullies who chase you. It's not the king and the prince who chase you. Good people don't chase you. So I think there should be realistic stories planted there. And there you talk about the fact that there was a girl called Rekha instead of Cinderella. I'm just giving fictitious name. A girl called Rekha, and this is what happened. And the girl turned back and slapped the kid there who was bullying, or who was using slangs, or who was trying to touch her inappropriately. Class 1 girl will learn that if I come across a situation, I don't have to freeze. I have to retaliate.
Right.
We will create a women force who will learn how to retaliate in public and private both. We will have sharp reduction in such cases of sexual abuse and other kind of things. Similarly, if I tell that there was a grandfather who was sitting in the house, and the grandson came to him, asked him that, Dadaji, I don't like this kind of a food, and Dadaji tells him, ki beta, this kind of a food is very much needed for your mental growth, for your sleep cycle. We are not teaching mental health, we are teaching good food, but indirectly we have taught nutrition, we have taught mental health, we have taught physical health. I think stories are the best things. In fact, psychology research shows, no, human beings, they see things, they learn things in visuals, and we remember things in stories. So start from stories. English and Hindi textbook, revise them thoroughly, class 1 to 5. And I'm sure 10 years down the line, the India that we will have will change. By the time we retire, we'll have completely new set of Indians, the kind that we may have. Are
Right,
there
sir.
any other question, ma'am?
Sir, we have many questions with us, sir. The last question I would like to take, sir, as you were talking about the visual images and the stories, there is one question related to media, that children today are extensively influenced with media, and we may sensitize the student regarding drug abuse, mental, physical, sexual abuse or violence, but media depicts these issues in a very different way. And how do we as teachers deal with such factors that we don't have any control over it when the child is outside the boundary of school?
That is really very true, and it's true not only for the Indian media, it's true for all the medias across the world. We have not yet learned to have a better control over the media exposure. See, the way you find the courts of India responding and the lawmakers of India responding, both of them, they have left the onus to the press. Okay, that you have a Press Bureau of India, you have the Editors Guild of India, they have their own set of regulatory mechanisms. But it is like telling a monitor of a class that these are the 30 students, now you manage them, and I leave it to you how you manage your section. Monitors are their colleagues, they cannot monitor them properly the way the teachers would do. Okay, similarly, if teachers would have been sufficient, there was no need for a school headmistress or headmaster. Okay, so we all know that there is a need for a regulatory mechanism, but to be politically correct, to be perceived to be politically correct, neither the judicial system of this country nor the lawmakers of this country, they want to intrude into this field. And therefore, media is left for self-regulation. And recent debate on two of the channels, I don't want to name them, one from Delhi, in fact, one from Noida, and other from Bombay, where the tussle is going on related to TRP, and Mumbai police playing its role there. We have seen how they are behaving. So self-regulation doesn't work for them. So when I know that media is not going to be regulated by anyone, and when I also know that self-regulation is not going to be implemented, at least in the coming years, then I have to self-regulate myself. I will minimize my exposure to the news. So if I find that Riya Chakravarti has a life of 4 days on national TV, I ensure that I'll watch it for 5 minutes or 7 minutes. The moment I see there is a repetition of news, I'll change it. I'll see anything else, including Bigg Boss, but not the media channel. Okay. This can be one way of self-regulation where I regulate myself because I can't regulate the media.
Right.
Okay. And there are alternative ways now. No, nowadays you have print media, which is available in the form of e-papers. You have e-magazines, and you have very good articles coming on blogs as well. So there you have a choice. Say electronic media, you don't have a choice. If they have switched on their channel, they will continue doing that. Say, I can understand their limitation. No, they have pumped money into a set of people whom they call correspondents, editors, online editors, offline editors. They have an OV van. Now there is a site, say for example, a village where some episode has taken place. I move 4 of my reporters in a OV van there. There is money involved into it. I have to recover the money. Think from their perspective. So if I air it for say 2 days, and the revenue that I generate because of the sensation that I create, okay, and others are not habitual. Most of us have started losing our ability to read. So we don't log to select e-papers or blogs or other kind of forums where we can read. We prefer to hear, we prefer to see.
Right.
But remember that television is considered as a passive medium. It blocks your thinking ability. So when you see and hear, you don't think. So overexposure to media is terrible. There are studies, no, in fact, no, what should be the exposure duration for what you call negatively portrayed news, so that your mind doesn't get polluted. In fact, 2004, when the tsunami had hit southern part of India, I remember a few years later, I think 2006 perhaps, uh, I published a paper. It was on direct and indirect exposure of tsunami related news on children, 8 to the early adolescent children and middle adolescent children. And we realized that children who were in Nagapattinam who experienced tsunami, physically experienced it, versus children in Cuddalore who did not physically experience it. But it was continuous exposure to the Tamil channels, no, who were showing live telecast of body floating there, rubbles there. Okay. Did they also experience the psychological trauma? And the answer was they were comparable. Both the groups of children reported comparable level of trauma and anxiety. So media does influence us heavily. And because we do not have a regulation over them and they are not regulating themselves, so I think the only option we are left is that we regulate our behavior. For instance, I can share with you, since April this year, I have not watched TV till now.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Strange,
So
sir.
I read the newspapers regularly, and sometimes if I get those video clips through other mediums, I watch them, but I ensure that if there is a repetition of a sentence after say a few seconds, I'll just stop it. I know that what this is going to be, because I don't want to get polluted too much. I know that I'm polluted to greater extent, but I don't want to contaminate myself further. So we have to exercise only self-constraint. There is no other way out, I think.
Masood ji, can we take 2 more minutes?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, thank you so much, sir. There's just one question I would like, very short answer from you. The question is overthinking a problem related to mental health? This is a question.
See, ma'am, if overthinking has to do with repetitive thought, then yes, it is related to mental health. But say if I am thinking about diverse things, then I might be a creative thinker. So it's not that if you overthink, that means that you are compromising with your mental health. All you have to ensure that the same thought should not continue perseverating. So it's not a say movement of the same thought. So it's a cyclic order of thought that keeps on revolving in your mind. If that happens, yes, it is a mental health concern. Okay, but if you do not have perseveration of the idea, okay, say for instance, if you are having some kind of a synchronized arrangement of words, and it retains in your mind, in your conscious awareness for quite some time. You sleep, you wake up again, you have that same synchrony of words, and 2 days later you write a piece of poetry. This is how people are creative. No? When people write poetry, when they compose music, when they think of creative things, even in the world of scientific researcher also, you will find this kind of a thing. But that is not an indicator of mental health issue. Other kinds of non-creative perseveration, of course, yes, that is a repetitive thought, and that is an indicator of compromise with the mental health.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. And on behalf of Amity University, our Honorable Vice Chancellor Ma'am, our very respected Chancellor Sir, Dr. Atul Chauhan, and our Founder President Sir, like I really would like to extend heartfelt thanks to you, because this was a very pertinent, topic if we talk about our department, our institution, because all are, budding teachers. So they really need to know about it. Thank you so much, sir, for taking out time and being here with us. I know we have overshot time, and IT people must be worried about that. But thank you so much, sir, once again. And thank you, Dr. Ritika, for getting Professor Bhushan to the, to our institution. And sir, we will be in touch with you.
Sure, it was my pleasure. It was my pleasure. And in fact, I don't know who else are the people who are connected right now. But of course, my thanks to all of you for this patient hearing. And I'm sure many questions perhaps would not have been entertained because of the time constraint. And even I had limited time to speak, but I know questions are far more important than unilateral, one-sided delivery of information. So I'm extremely glad that you gave me an opportunity to interact with you all. And I'm sure the questions that you have, you can talk to your ma'am. Definitely you will get an answer from her. Thank you once again.
Thank you so much, sir. Next time we will meet you definitely in offline mode, sir.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much,
So,
sir.
Thank you, sir.
can I leave the meeting now?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Okay.
Thank you so
Thank
much.